Hello, Zinger Nation. This is Justin Roberti here to bring you another episode of Web3 Anarchy. And we have a great show prepared today. I believe that Logan will be joining me shortly for all the Logan fans out there. But we are going to be talking about raising funds in an uncertain crypto market. Obviously, if you've been following not only the crypto news, but the news overall, you can see that inflation has been a problem. There's global conflict, specifically with the attack of Ukraine by Russia. And we've got a lot of things that have been impacting the market versus the very rosy, continuous bull run of 2021. Recently, a recent global crypto market report, however, is still saying that the crypto market, which reached 1.78 billion in value in 2021, they're looking for it to have a compound annual growth rate of 58.4% over the next 5 years. So that's fairly incredible. Looking to reach 32 billion by 2027. So I mean, obviously, even through hardships, crypto has continued to thrive. Even more than I necessarily would have predicted. We know that it is a deflationary measure, but it's also or deflationary assets, but it also tends to be a place where people will shift their money and attention when the rest of the global market starts to become unstable, as it has been. So despite having gone through some fairly hard times with certain NFT projects and quite a few altcoins, of course, Bitcoin fell down from its high from last year and so forth, hanging around 47,000 now, or 45,000 as of last Wednesday. They're still calling for, there are experts who are saying that it's going to make 100K by the end of 2022. I kind of thought that those laser eye declarations for this year were going to be, now subtly for 2023, but apparently not. So obviously, in cryptocurrency, money and fundraising is a big concern. It's something that everyone should know a little bit about, whether you are a project leader or whether you are, just an investor looking to understand how things work, essentially. One thing that I've certainly seen from having covered many different kinds of industry, including tech and media, is that compared to other kinds of traditional industries, crypto really has a great handle on the fundraising itself and different creative ways to accomplish it. So I think it's going to be a very interesting year. And to talk to somebody about fundraising during the kind of up and downs that we've been facing in crypto and altcoins and NFTs this year, I'm looking to I have Nadja Bester as my guest coming on. She's an entrepreneur, writer, speaker. She's a startup mentor, and she's co-founder of the Engage to Earn IDO launchpad Ad Lunam. And she's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about how to raise funds for your project. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Nadja on now. Hello, Nadja. How are you?
Hey, Justin. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. So it has been a kind of a tumultuous year this year, hasn't it? You can tell just by the attitude on Twitter that it isn't all sunny and roses like it was in 2021.
Well, I mean, we've had this year before, right? So for those of us who have been in this space for a while, like this is all too familiar. The ups are always followed by a down, and
Right.
then kind of like that roller coaster leading up to the up again. So yeah, who knows where we are at the moment? I believe that the worst might be over. But let's see. I mean, in crypto, you never know. It's a new surprise every single day, and that's why we love it, right?
So you're feeling hopeful. You think that there have been good indications lately that we're perhaps turning the corner.
So I think that things are changing. Every time that there's a hype, it's like, I don't know, a pressure that builds up and it builds
Mhm.
up, and there's more hype that is added to the mix, and then it's almost as if the bubble kind of bursts, and then we go back to basics. And
Right.
every time that we go through the cycle, the basics get stronger than it was before. So I'm excited to see for what's coming next. I believe that there are a lot of really great projects out there that are being paid attention to by institutional investors. Hasn't reached, I think, retail investors as yet, but for sure they are good signs. So yeah, always
Mhm.
hopeful.
Well, that's interesting. So in 2021, obviously, you're going to see a lot of projects, blockchain startups that are entering the space as one of the co-founders of an IDO launchpad. What interesting trends are you seeing in 2022 that distinguishes fundraising as you're used to seeing it from like last year?
So it's always difficult to compare the bear market that follows the bull market, right? Because I
Right.
mean, 2021 was one of those years in crypto that was just amazing. Everything was exploding, and we were all super excited about every single new thing that came up. And I mean, this is the nature of crypto: is the more innovation there is, the more innovation is worked on, right? And it's like I don't know, a mushroom field. It's just one thing after another.
Right.
Now, of course, we are back to kind of the hibernation mode, and so with that wonderful introduction you gave with all of the bad stuff that's going on in the world at the moment.
Well,
So we know
there's
that
Russia
there's a
attacking
lot of
Ukraine,
pressure.
inflation, supply chain issues.
Right. And I mean, the fear and greed index, I think the last time I checked was at 16. It's like we are in extreme, extreme fear. And it's interesting because the crypto market sometimes parallels the financial industry that we are used to, and then kind of it diverges again. So it does this dance.
Mhm.
But I think what I'm seeing is that people are going back to basics in the sense that they are focusing once again on what truly has utility. And this is a good sign because ultimately, crypto has this amazing hype cycle, but that's not what builds out the industry in the end. And every time that we come into this bear market, we're like,
Mhm.
okay, great. So we have to
Mhm.
remember at the end there should be utility. And then we focus on really building things for a while. So it's a really good thing, and yeah, I have a lot of positive thoughts about the year ahead, but different than
Mhm.
last year. Maybe not so colorful and sexy.
No,
Not in the beginning, anyway.
it's not going to be the all the time party as last year. I've actually seen some pretty depressed NFT bros on Twitter recently. I mean, people are still hype. Obviously, people still believe, and I think that that's ultimately the thing that's really going to, like, the intangible quality that's going to carry crypto over. It's like the same thing that happened with COVID. After all, it could have been a reason to not believe, but that's not how people treated it. People treat it as a reason to believe harder in a lot of
Absolutely.
ways. So they really benefited us. So,
And it's gonna be interesting now with inflation rates hiking, and I mean, savings is useless, and you can't really go from, I don't know, stocks to bonds anymore. Not in this
mhm,
market. And yeah, I mean, rentals versus home ownership, if you look at
mhm,
those numbers. So it's interesting to see how people's attitudes toward money is
mhm,
starting to shift,
right,
because they are realizing that the traditional finance world does not give them the returns that they
mhm,
were either used to before, or that have been told to them this is what they are going to
mhm,
get. Because I mean, inflation is just wiping things out from the ground up. And so I
mhm.
believe that we are going to see a trend going into stable coins and into DeFi. And this is where a lot of the excitement is going to be in terms of that mass adoption, I think.
Mhm. So what are you seeing from your specific position in terms of, like, how would you describe the average project approaching you? They're in their first approaching Ad Lunam, looking to get on board with the Launchpad. Have they done any private fundraising before they come to you? And has there been any palpable change between this year and last year?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. First of all, there's definitely a huge change over the last few months. couple of months ago, projects that we were speaking to were swimming in funds. You don't even have to, I mean, you can stand inside your house, open your window, put out your hand, and people would put money inside of it. It
Is
was
that
one
all
of
you
those,
had to do? I should have
that
done
was
that.
all you had to do, Justin. If you didn't get the memo, talk to me next time. So, it was an insane time in crypto, like it always is during these markets. And this also means that you see a lot of new project coming in, and everyone has something exciting that they're working on, and all the bells and whistles and colors and I don't know, sounds. And it's one of those electronic toys that children want to play with, and it just it moves around and it makes a lot of light and noise.
Right.
But now, because funding does not come so easy anymore, now again, projects are either finding it difficult to receive funding because there's more hype on their side than there is utility, or alternatively, what's very interesting is projects that previously might have had a more difficult time fundraising, which are true utility projects because they were not sexy enough for that hype cycle, they are now receiving more attention again. So I think for sure, the difference is palpable. And then in terms of the kind of projects that come to us, so it really depends on the market. I think that, again, in a bull market, we might meet projects at a later stage, or they might, and this is typically what happens, is they move through the different funding rounds so quickly because their rounds fill up incredibly fast. Right. Whereas in a market like this, you can be speaking to a project for weeks and they would still be in the same funding round. So interesting to note the differences, but again, this is why we're in crypto, right? It's like no day is the same. It's like the sunrise is never the same if you have a thing for sunrises. So if you have a thing for crypto, no day is ever the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you compare to, of course, we work in an industry where 5 years ago is the difference of an era, essentially, like, the 2017 era versus 2022. Like I remember way back, which is kind of hilarious to me. That's been like a huge paradigm shift in a lot of ways. I mean, tech's always.
And it's, that's the really cool thing is I also came into crypto in 2017, and it really feels like I go back in the annals of history to remember, back in my day, the kind of granny quip that you would get. But it has changed so much. It's not the same space anymore. It's really incredible to see like how in, what is it, a span of 5-6 years, things have just completely transformed. And the cool thing is that everyone in the industry are the ones doing it, right? Like people working in the industry, people investing into the industry, people like you reporting on the industry. I mean, together we have this triage of just, growth, and that's really cool. So this is my 1 a.m. Ode to crypto.
Yeah, I was going to mention that I was 1 a.m. for you. I didn't know if you wanted me to reveal your secret or not, though. Nadja is willing to speak to us at any time, day or night, because such is their dedication to crypto and to the space. So we applaud Nadja for coming to speak to us today.
I'm gonna do a shameless plug here and say that I've been awake for almost 24 hours, so that should count in my favor as well.
So, have you seen any really great innovations from this year? I was impressed last year, for example, when I first started seeing, we saw the horrible devastation of the ICOs in 2017 going down like the Hindenburg, essentially. And
horrible, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least in their original form, at the time, everything's sort of transformed, which is part of what these IDO platforms are about. And I was impressed that people were doing more quiet, kind of like upfront private fundraising rounds, and rather than basing everything on the launch of a coin, which felt a little bit too much like Kickstarter to me at the time, to be honest. Like either you had the hype or you didn't. So you got tremendous amounts of money, or you ended up with like $37, right? Like I've seen some disastrous ICOs from back in the day. So what are people coming up with this year that you think is really innovative, or an innovative direction for fundraising?
think that what's happening now is everyone has a lot more to prove to each other. This
Right.
is as an industry insider, I guess, this is really what I'm seeing is there's a level of trust that is coming into play now that I think, with each passing year, the industry matures in many different ways. But in terms of fundraising, I think that the trust factor before was not as high. I mean, or the requirement for a trust factor wasn't as high. So you were
Mhm.
mentioning ICOs just now. I mean, I remember in those days, I mean, if you think last year was easy in terms of raising money, I mean, in 2017, you simply had to think about raising money and the money
Yeah.
appeared in your hand, right? Like it was, I mean, you didn't even have to open the window.
You
So
needed a white paper. It had to be at least 15 pages long and make claims.
and that's it, right? Like your white paper was your everything. I mean, as long as you had a white paper, like that was it. That's all you ever needed.
Right.
And so I think that with each passing year and with each passing, let's say, crypto winter, because obviously this is the time when things really start becoming worrisome, right? Like when the money is flowing, no one's thinking about where the industry is headed or what it needs. But in times like these, when we all go, oh, what are we going to do now? Like, how are we going to, mitigate this sort of storm that we're in? Then people start asking questions again. So I think what we are doing now is we are going, well, I need to trust you a little bit more. And so
Right.
therefore, projects are having to be more trustworthy. Otherwise, they're not going to even get the attention from investors. And yeah, I guess investors are being asked the same.
Mhm.
Before it was a case of, investors are throwing money at projects and promising the stars and the moon in exchange. But
Mhm.
now it really comes down to a more personable relationship in a sense during a market like this. And so
Mhm.
what that's going to lead into in terms of fundraising, I think only time will tell. But I'm quite excited about what's happening in the fundraising space because I think it's raising the bar higher than what it has been during all of these years in crypto. Let's
So,
see.
so let me put you on the spot for a minute here because you're one of those. I know so many. Maybe it's because I know so many people who are doing projects, and I I hear from them all the time. Obviously, you do too. I imagine on the same basis, 150 a day are writing me and so forth. Um, what do you consider to be some like positive signs when someone's coming to you, and what are some red flags? To hear it directly from because Nadja is the one of the people that you could be putting your project in front of to try and launch your project. So it's good to know what criteria are important.
So, I mean, this is exactly the same question that you would ask of anyone raising funds in the traditional finance industry. And I think, in a sense, the answer is the same. For sure, there has to be a great product. It's a little bit different in crypto in the sense that you don't need to prove the gap in the market as much as you do in the traditional finance world.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from, or even over and above a great project, it really comes down to a good team. And I think this goes for any business in the world, in any industry in the world. I think that a great team can build a fantastic product, and we have seen this. I mean, even in this market, there are still projects that are doing well and that are being used. And I mean, they are becoming the de facto standard in terms of a crypto company, right? And this is amazing. And then you have other projects where you would not want to trust that team with your money or probably
Sure.
with anything. So
Right.
I think, there's a lot of very logical thinking that comes into
Mm-hmm.
play. But then also in terms of, I think what a red flag would be, and this is not necessarily the fault of the project, is simply jumping on the hype cycle bandwagon and not preparing for a market like the one that we have at the moment, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were talking to a lot of projects just before this market hit who were all kind of building for that runaway train that is whatever that latest hype was, which at the time was GameFi and the metaverse. NFTs had already kind of sort of cooled down.
Right.
And I mean, as soon as this market hit, what do you do? Because now, how long is it going to be before your project, comes sort of round the clock again? And it's like being in a carousel and you have to wait for your turn. So
Mhm,
it's more difficult when your project is built only for hype. So I
mhm,
think that depending on where you are in the hype cycle, I think that could be a red flag as well.
mhm,
But for sure, coming back to the team, I think, makes a massive, massive difference. And that's something
mhm,
I think that a lot of people overlook. Because again, they look at the bells and whistles, the bright, shiny objects attached to the idea and to the project, but
mhm,
forgetting that real people need to build this, right? And that's not easy. Building
mhm.
stuff is not easy.
Mhm. In terms of looking for like who picked up the torch and continued on, perfecting the hype cycle itself. And I don't mean that in a negative way. When I say hype, I mean it's kind of a necessary part of a project. After all, you need to have enthusiasm. In a lot of ways, our investor audiences or our buying audiences are what separate crypto from other kinds of industries. Part of what makes it unique. Uh, do you think that, for example, it's like are NFTs like the ones who are sort of the spiritual successors of ICOs? Because it seems like if anybody's hyping really successfully today, it's going to be them.
I mean, I think that just to backtrack a little bit, that hype is one of the really fun things about the industry in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, right? Like
Mhm.
I mean, if we talk about this, this roller coaster that we are all so addicted to, um, I mean, in order to stick it out for the lows, I mean, you gotta enjoy the highs, right? And the
Yeah.
hype is part of it. I mean, it's amazing to get swept up in this idea of and fill in the blank because crypto and NFTs and all of these innovations, I mean, they can represent whatever the hell they want to you because you define what it means. So I think hype is really important, not only for, of course, projects to succeed, but also at this point in time for the psychology of the industry, like people need to feel good. It's that, I mean, why do we do
Too much
things that
depression
make
in
us sad
2023.
sometimes? Because sometimes it makes us happy. So NFTs, I think, are because it touches a lot on things that we like to questions that we've not had answers to. For example, how to reward artists for their work. I mean, we have been enjoying art for thousands of years,
Mhm.
and with varying amounts of artistic success. Sometimes, you got a rich patron in the Middle Ages, and I mean, today you have NFTs. So I think it touches on something really deep inside of us. Plus, it's really pretty and really colorful and shiny, and it makes us feel happy. I mean, I've been amazed to kind of see how people tap into their inner child spirit in terms of
Yeah.
NFTs. Like, it's just been a really fun space to be in, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, crypto has to sometimes be serious, and you can see this in DeFi. I mean, DeFi, for example, all of the markets have just gone down, down, down. And then people put their money in stable coins and they put it in DeFi. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I might be losing everywhere, but at least I'm making a few bucks here.
Sure.
So DeFi is serious, but
Mhm.
NFTs and that, GameFi and Metaverse, and these are all really fun things. And I love
Mhm.
that we are tapping into that, but also, yeah, to remember that it's not just hype, it's also utility. So the
Mhm.
two go hand in hand always.
What about gaming? Like I was just looking at a study on that. Like there was over 1 billion moving in fundraising, moving into the gaming space just in January of this year, for example, specifically around blockchain gaming. So I imagine you must be seeing lots of white papers about those kinds of projects. How are you feeling about NFTs, gaming, metaverse?
So, yeah, things are really in its infancy. I think we saw with Axie Infinity, like there was a lot of excitement around play to
Mhm.
earn, and it was amazing just how this exploded and this concept. And oh my God, you can actually game and then make money out of it. And it sounded like every gamer's dream. But I mean, what we've been seeing over the last few months, like the usage numbers there are down. I mean, not to say that the hack the other day, you know, that aside, just in general, people are, it's all about the hype, right? And so at some point, when that dies down, is it going to continue on? And I think blockchain games are, it's really early days. And I think that the problem with a hype market is always that you end up seeing way more projects than there's actually space for at this time. But it's needed in order to stimulate the innovation behind it, right? So it's almost like a sacrificial lamb. So unfortunately, but fortunately, in crypto, you have the ability to fall down and get up and fall down and get up. And you do this as an investor, you do this as a founder, you do this as an employee. Like everyone in crypto learns to be so resilient. So even if you have a project that doesn't survive a current market condition, you learn so much from it. So the next time you are more agile, you're kind of more able to kind of bring to the table what is needed in order to make a project succeed. So yeah, I mean, I think we're building an ecosystem, and that's a really fun and exciting thing, but there's also a lot of pain sometimes, right? So yeah, you win some, you lose some, and that counts for everything in crypto.
I'm just gonna a couple of little reminders to the audience. First of all, smash that like button, as Logan would always say, or like that smash button, whichever you prefer. People like self-expression around here. We have and also we're going to do a Twitter Spaces after this. It's already been tweeted out by Lunam and also by Benzinga's account. We posted it in the comments as well. Come join us for a little Q&A and after party with Nadja after this, and hopefully Logan will join us as well. We have a question from Gary Life from the comments. Are we seeing an impact either on like the viability of projects to execute because of energy and chip shortage? Maybe we could expand that to other supply chain problems. Or are you seeing blockchain projects that are coming out that are meant to maybe address those problems? How is that impacting us? I get the feeling that it's something it's a situation that's still developing, that we haven't felt the full impact of yet.
So what I find really interesting over these last few months, because in a sense, we all knew this was coming, because historically speaking, there's always a lull around the time that there was. So there was this thing at the back of people's minds that, okay, this was going to happen. But at the same time, when it did hit, on the one hand, it hit gradually. So people were still kind of in denial about it. It's like, oh, okay, I can see this coming, but maybe not so much. Maybe it's going to be less this time, or maybe it's going to bounce back quicker. And I think at some point people started realizing, oh, well, this is happening. This is it. Yeah. And I've seen projects respond in different ways. I've seen projects panic because especially if they needed to catch a tail end of a market that's now just dwindling or even just disappeared overnight. I've seen other projects respond in the sense that they became very introspective for a while and kind of went back to the drawing board and said, well, how can we adapt in order to still offer the value that we wanted to offer, but maybe tweak it a little bit, or even offer more value than before, because that's the thing, right? It's like in a market like this, you need to offer value. And I saw projects who just kept on doing whatever they were going to do anyway and just soldier through. And I can't say that any one is better than the other. I think that, maybe perhaps the option one and panic is maybe not the best way to go. But even living through a panic as a project, that can also make or break you. And if it breaks you, you learn from it. So I think that ultimately, you are right, it's for sure still developing, and I'm very excited to see what we are going to see coming out of this. But I think it's also, again, going to get to the point where with each passing year, projects have to really be more and more professional in every aspect of the business. And times like these stumbling blocks on a project's journey, these are the times to learn from. And I think some projects are able to do that. And, you know, you can't say that you can be really good at learning from your mistakes, because I mean, that implies that you made a mistake in the first place. So mistakes have been made and will be made, but I think it's all about how a project responds to it, because ultimately that is what investors are investing in, is a project's ability to take this long term and build this out. So yeah, I mean, whether a project succeeds at this time, or whether they do it the next time they launch a coin, or, you know, the key is, are investors safe in the meantime? And I think that's something, of course, that doesn't have quite such an easy answer. But yeah.
So you've got an interesting project yourself, not only because it is an IDO launchpad, but also you've got this proof of intention mechanics going on. I know you've been working toward your first cohort of projects that you're going to help that you're helping to raise for. You know, why don't we just take the last couple of minutes of the show for you to tell us a little bit about what Lunam's doing, and when we're going to be able to see your first group of projects.
So, I mean, we are in an interesting position because as a launchpad, of course, we need to have a steady stream of very strong projects willing to put themselves out there onto the market. And so for us, it's been an especially interesting time because we've been talking to projects for months and months now and seeing how the sentiment on the ground changes. So there was a time, you know, a couple of months ago when we'd speak to projects and they'd go like, man, I have no idea when we are going to have our IDO because we were going to do it on this date, and now who knows what's going to happen next. And there was a time when they were postponing it, okay, till next month, till 2 months from now. So it's been interesting to see how that sentiment has shifted in terms of project confidence in the market, and vice versa, of course. And as a launchpad, I think it's really interesting for us to see all of the different stakeholders, because we have, you know, institutional investors that we deal with, and we have retail investors, and we have projects. And so everyone brings a slightly different line of thinking to the table. And as a launchpad, this is something that we have to somehow bring into a collaboration. And coming to, you know, what Lunam is, so I'll backtrack just a brief second and just say that the three of us who co-founded Lunam, so it's myself, Jason Fernandez, and Lawrence Hudson. So Lawrence, for example, used to be the CTO at Paid Network and their Ignition launchpad. So he's directly worked on a launchpad before and brings that level of understanding. Never mind the fact that he is, you know, you talk about OG and tech. I mean, he worked on email in the 1980s, and that was when I was born. So I'm in constant awe of his. It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Yoda.
Oh, it's good to be so much older than everyone now.
Right.
It's wonderful. You can look forward to that, Nadja.
By default, like everyone just loves and respects you. So Jason, on the other hand, he brings a lot of investment experience into Lunam, and myself bring a lot of marketing experience. I've been in marketing and communications in crypto, you know, since whenever. So each of us come from a slightly different angle as well. And so when we then kind of brainstormed, I mean, the concept of a launchpad, we felt incredibly strongly about the fact that there are, and at that time, there wasn't nearly as many launchpads as there are now. Now there's just a new one, I don't know, every half a day. Before it was every day. But we really felt that, okay, what we needed to do is we needed to put something out there that's completely different. And the key sort of glue that held our idea together and still does is the fact that projects and investors need to have a true collaboration between them. It cannot be, you know, 50, I mean, it cannot be 60-40. It has to be 50-50 in terms of the contribution and the rewards. And so in a very brief nutshell, at Lunam, we use a proof of attention allocation mechanism. So instead of using a lottery or an auction in order to extend that allocation in an IDO, you have a proof of attention score, which is something you build up on a sort of very regular basis by posting, by commenting, by doing things that you would do normally on Twitter, on Discord, on Reddit. I don't know if anyone still uses Facebook, but Facebook or maybe TikTok is the place where people are now.
But nobody
So
wants
you
to,
are
but billions of
already.
people do. So no worries.
I mean, yeah, I'm in that weird phase of life where I use some of the old ones, but definitely not the new ones. So I'm not old, but I'm not young either. So no idea what's cool and hip right now.
Everybody's
So
young to me.
so essentially, what it is that we do is we allow projects to extend allocation to investors that they feel would add the most value. And we reward investors by extending allocation to them for the behaviors that they already use in crypto, which is reading about it, talking about it, engaging with it on a daily basis. So that in a very brief nutshell.
Well, let's go ahead and take things pretty quickly over to Twitter Spaces, since we have to go get that started, and we're 5 minutes behind right now. But Nadja, it's been very good to talk to you on this platform. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead, like and subscribe, and happy Good Friday. I hope everyone's having a good Friday for those who are celebrating. And we will catch you over on Twitter Spaces. Come join us. I believe that the link is already posted. So we'll see you in just a couple of minutes. And thank you for coming in and speaking to us today, Nadja. All right,
Awesome,
take care.
gentlemen. Thanks.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will see you over on Twitter Spaces. Yeah, I cut that off a little second too soon. Sorry about that, Nadja. But I want to get over and get Twitter Spaces started. Come on over and join us if you'd like to chat a little bit more in more of a casual setting with more Q&A. Anyway, thank you, everyone. It's been great spending this time with you today, and have a good day. I'll see you on Twitter if you coming over with me. Peace.